At 6:41 a.m., my front door eased open like a guilty conscience, and a woman in a pearls and clipboard combo slid inside, whispering the word inspection. She took 2 steps, slipped, and painted herself head to toe in a Niagara of bright blue goo cascading from my doorframe. She squealed. I blinked, and the gallon drum labeled Ultra Saruan Exterior swung like a church bell, dripping justice on my foyer runner. I'm Evan Calder, 41 years old. Coffee at dawn. Emails by noon. And please don't talk to me about fertilizer ratios. I bought a tidy ranch in Copper Hollow, a development where lawns are green, smiles are beige, and bylaws breed at night. Enter Mara Yates, HOA, president and self-appointed custodian of neighborhood character, which apparently means she gets a key-shaped charm bracelet and the urge to assess everyone's mail slot. My crimes, according to her, were wind chimes of an unapproved melody, a bird bath that encourages aven loitering, and curtains that read eggshell. But she insisted photograph as letters piled up like pizza menus in my mailbox, each one more ridiculous than the last. Then things went completely unlucky. First, she accidentally wandered into my backyard to confirm fence integrity, as she put it with a sweet smile that never reached her eyes. Then came the rescue of a package she said looked lonely on my porch. I found it opened, contents inventoried with sticky notes that read tacky mugs, probably single in her loopy handwriting. Twice I returned from the grocery store to find her inside my house, claiming the HOA granted spot check authority. She measured my living room rug with a tape measure she pulled from her purse. She sniffed my hand soap in the bathroom and made notes on her clipboard. She left a citation for improper lemon because my bowl contained limes instead. After I told her to knock like a normal person, she announced a new policy with great fanfare at the monthly meeting. Surprise interior assessments for at-risk decor, she called it, beaming like she'd invented democracy. My lawyer coughed the word trespass when I called him that afternoon. Mara smiled like a cat with a badge when I mentioned legal action at the next encounter. She said the HOA covenant supersedes state law, which is not how laws work, but she seemed convinced. The woman had created her own reality, where she was queen of the cul-de-sac, and we were all her subjects. The violations kept coming like a subscription service I never signed up for. My doormat was 3x2 wide, apparently violating subsection 12.4 of the Entrance Aesthetics Guidelines. The garden my daughter gave me for Father's Day was deemed psychologically disturbing to potential buyers. Even though no houses were for sale, she measured the height of my grass with an actual ruler. Kneeling on my lawn at 7 o'clock in the morning while I watched from my kitchen window, coffee growing cold in my hand. When I installed a security camera, she filed a complaint that it was creating a surveillance state atmosphere, inconsistent with the neighborhood's welcoming spirit. Her inspections became more frequent and more bizarre. She would appear at odd hours, sometimes with a small entourage of confused board members she dragged along as witnesses. Poor Gerald, from 3 houses down, looked apologetic every time, mouthing sorry behind her back, while she documented the angle of my porch light or the spacing between my deck chairs. She once spent 45 minutes photographing my garbage cans from multiple angles, creating what she called a non-compliance portfolio. The woman had turned HOA enforcement into performance art. and we were all unwilling participants in her one-woman show about the dangers of slightly off-white trim paint. The day she used what she called a community master key, which was actually just a locksmith friend with boundary issues, to slip in while I showered. I hit my limit so hard it left a dent in my patience. The sound of footsteps in my hallway while I was shampooing made my blood run cold. I wrapped a towel around myself and found her photographing my bookshelf, muttering about inappropriate literature placement. The deputy who responded to my 911 call said helpfully, "That's not a thing she can do," while trying not to laugh at the absurdity. The situation had been escalating for months before the shower incident. She'd started leaving herself notes on my door with a special HOA presidential seal she'd ordered online, each one more unhinged than the last. "Your microwave usage exceeds recommended community standards," one read. Another claimed my Wi-Fi network name was too whimsical for the neighborhood's professional atmosphere. I'd named it Pretty Fly for a Wi-Fi, which apparently violated her sense of technological decorum. She even complained that my cat, Mr. Whiskers, spent too much time in the front window, creating what she called an unpredictable visual element for passing residents. Mara filed a counter-complaint that I'd brandished a bath towel menacingly, which the deputy read aloud with a perfectly straight face before tossing it in the trash. Fine, I thought. If she insists on breaking in, she can meet a low-tech, high-dignity deterrent. I mounted a hinged paint can behind the doorframe, rigged to tip if the door opened past an inch without proper key usage. Blue, because it photographs well against any surface. Also, because Mara has a white Lexus and the soul of a nautical flag that demands everything match perfectly. 2 mornings later, I heard it from my kitchen, where I was enjoying my coffee. Click, creak, splash. And now we have a SMF on a mission, screaming in my foyer. My security cam caught her slipping on the paint, flailing her arms like a windmill in a hurricane, and cursing the color wheel with words I didn't know she knew. She bolted from my house, leaving a comet trail of Ceruan across my entryway, down the front steps, and along the sidewalk like Hansel and Gretel's lawsuit waiting to happen. I called the deputy again, who arrived with backup this time, both officers trying to maintain professional composure. He looked at the footage on my phone, then followed the paint walkway to Mara's Lexus, which now matched my doorpost like a Panoni swatch. The blue handprints on her steering wheel were particularly artistic. Meanwhile, neighbors gathered in slippers and robes, sipping travel mugs and pretending not to film while absolutely filming everything. Mrs. Chen, from 2 doors down, actually brought popcorn in a mixing bowl. The scene was better than any reality show. Mara stood in her driveway, blue paint dripping from her usually perfect blonde bob, leaving Ceruan tears on her white blazer with the HOA president embroidered in gold thread. She kept sputtering about assault with a liquid substance, which isn't a real charge, while trying to wipe paint from her pearl necklace with tissues that just spread it around more. Her husband, who'd emerged from their house in his bathrobe, took one look at her and went back inside, presumably to pretend this wasn't happening. The paint had gotten into her shoes somehow, and with every step she took, she left perfect blue footprints on her pristine driveway, like a trail of shame. One of the officers was documenting everything with his body cam, occasionally zooming in on particularly damning evidence, like the paint-covered lockpicks that had fallen from her purse. Yes, She had actual lockpicks, which he tried to explain were for HOA emergency purposes only. The second officer was taking statements from neighbors who suddenly had lots to say about Mara's previous invasions. Tom, from across the street, mentioned finding her in his garage, evaluating storage efficiency. The Johnsons revealed she'd entered through their dog door to leave a citation about their peppery being too fragrant. Everyone had a Mara story, and they were all ready to share them now that she stood there looking like she'd lost a fight with a meeting held that evening in the clubhouse that perpetually smells like celery and authority. The deputy played my footage on the big screen, usually reserved for budget presentations. Blue footprints led from my door to Mara's designer heels under the table, which he tried to hide by crossing her ankles. She attempted to gave the TV into silence. The TV declined to comply. The locksmith buddy, looking like he wanted to melt into the floor, admitted he'd made her a universal courtesy key after she claimed the HOA had legal entry rights comparable to fire departments, which is not a sentence reality recognizes in any state. The board voted to suspend her immediately, but the county went much further. The prosecutor, a nonsense woman who looked personally offended by the case, filed charges for criminal trespass, unlawful entry, and tampering with mail for that lonely package incident. My favorite detail from the police report was the officer photographing blue palm prints on her clipboard, literal fingerprints preserved in the paint like evidence from a Smith crime scene. Her Lexus got towed for obstructing the street while she argued prima ruin with the officers, which is apparently not a valid legal defense. The courtroom was packed 3 weeks later with every resident of Copper Hollow who could take time off work. Mara's lawyer, who looked exhausted before proceedings even began, tried to argue she had implied consent based on HOA authority. The judge, a stern woman with zero tolerance for nonsense, actually laughed out loud at that one. The security footage played on the courtroom monitors showing Mara's paint-covered figure fleeing my house like a blue banshee. Several jurors covered their mouths to hide smiles. When the prosecutor presented the evidence of multiple break-ins, the fake master key, and the mail tampering, Mara's face went from confident to confused to completely crestfallen. The locksmith testified that Mara had told him she needed the